Howdy, people. What is up? This is the first episode of a new show that we don't even have a title for. You'll probably see it in the opening credits. But I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Kato, and with me today is...
Max.
And we are two filmmakers, film aficionados, all that you'd like to know about film. We've probably been a combined force of 80 years of of appreciating cinema and stuff like that. So since this is a new series and we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, if that's the correct phrase for it. What are some directors that, Max, that you find are important in your introduction into cinema, and ones that you'd like to keep an eye on, like top 4? I'm not saying top 4, but just name 4 at least that you thought were really important into your introduction into cinema.
Yeah, Spielberg, Fincher, Kubrick, James Cameron. Those are probably like, I'm even thinking like earlier in my life. Not Fincher because he came a little bit later, but Kubrick, Spielberg, Scorsese too. Like those are the people that like got me into movies and whatever was happening in the 80s, with George Lucas and all that kind of like blockbuster stuff that was going on. That's really what pulled me in. And
you pretty much like any genre, pretty much. Do you lean towards any genre in particular? Okay, that's a good sign. That's a good sign from people that enjoy cinema.
I don't think I do, man. I mean, there's times where, when I was younger, yes, as a kid, you get into like certain things. Like most kids like action or sci-fi, or you know what I mean. But right. I think as an adult, I get into moods where I'm into a certain genre or a certain director. But then I really love any type of film. I love comedies. I love movies. I love series. There's no, I don't have a specific genre.
It's incredible that there's a wealth of stories that have been told cinematically, since the beginning of when the machines were invented to create them. It's one of those kind of wonderful way that human beings have been able to tell stories, and the evolution of telling stories. And the fact that we spend money, or at least these big companies spend money, they take the risk of spending money to tell tales. And it's not easy for any cinema or any film to be made. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of teamwork that needs to be involved. So it's almost seeing any sort of film is a miracle. Thinking about all the work that people have put into it, from vision, from the thought of it to the actual getting on set and filming it, and the almost tedious nature of it being made. But I obviously have a +1 to the directors that you brought on. I'm basically 100% behind that. Also with, I would say, Takashi Miike, but he's sort of like an outsider cinema guy. But I think that it really speaks to these storytellers and how important they are to culture in general. And how we're going to start up this first episode is we're going to be talking about a film, a duology, maybe a trilogy to some people that are out of their minds, but it really is a duology. It's the DUNE film series that is directed by Denis Villeneuve. Okay, it's written by John Spates, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth, and it's based obviously on the novels, the celebrated science fiction novels. So when you first, how did you hear about DUNE, actually? Where just the book in general, I guess, or the film? Because I know you haven't read the books, and I'll go a little into that because I have. But tell me, when you first heard DUNE is being made, were you like, oh, no problem, because it's Villeneuve, and what's your thoughts on Villeneuve?
Well, I heard about DUNE from the Lynch version in 1984, because I remember as a kid seeing it on like Channel 11 or something, like, and I remember I had a cousin that really, she was into like those kind of films, like science fiction. She was kind of a nerd, and she loved like David Lynch, but she would always talk about that movie. But anyway, fast forward, like I never got into DUNE. I might have seen some clips of it, but I really just, DUNE was just always like something that I knew about, but I never really got into it. Okay. It wasn't until these new movies that Denis has done, and when he was doing the first DUNE Part 1, I was excited because of just him as a director. Right. I was like, oh, he's definitely gonna, he's already has his track record. He's not just starting up. He's already made major films that are beloved. And so I'm like, okay, now he's doing Dune. This is going to be a whole new thing. So I was excited about it. Also, there was a sci-fi series, mini-series, I think it was a mini-series.
Sci-Fi Network, right?
Sci-Fi Network, yeah. That did it in like the early 2000s.
Right.
But I also didn't see that either because I wasn't interested.
Yeah, I was aware of that too. I think when I saw, because this is obviously based on the books by Frank Herbert, and obviously my same, I don't know why I just wasn't interested in watching Dune. It's so funny because as a kid, and I'm sure people who love Dune are going to be like, are you an idiot? Because I thought, oh, Dune, that's probably not as good as Star Wars when I was a kid because I just didn't know any better.
Right.
And obviously Star Wars borrowed from Dune, and I had no idea about that.
A lot.
To the point that the fans like are, they say phrases like, "Oh, Star Wars is science fiction for kids, and Dune is science fiction for adults." I think there's
which is true.
made. Yeah,
which is true. I mean, that's how I see it now.
Yeah, of course. After these films, and I think one of the first things I saw about Dune, like it disturbed me greatly when I was young, is I saw a clip of Dune on TV. Like, obviously, you see the parts with I've only seen the movie now after I've seen Dune 2, Villeneuve's Dune 2, Part 2. I saw a clip of the old film when I was very young, and it was a part with obviously this is going to be an episode full of spoilers, but it was with Duncan Idaho, the actor. I don't know who the actor was that played Duncan Idaho in the original. And he's running, and he has this sort of cartoon, like obviously hand framed animated suit, right? Like that thing that's like a shield on him.
Force field, yeah.
Right, force field, and there's a bullet that it's not. I guess it's not a very good force field because the bullet. I remember it going into the suit.
Yeah.
And I was just watching it, and I felt this like deep like terror. Because he could not move his head away from the bullet,
right?
And the bullet just
that's when he dies, right?
That's
when he dies, yeah.
And I was so disturbed by that, I just didn't watch the movie, like because I was like, I found that like, and I'll give that a credit to Lynch about that because that was like disturbing to me because it was just like a slow bullet, and they've done that in movies now a lot, but like that bothered me really badly. And I don't know if you want to go a little bit into the first 84 Lynch before we get into this Villeneuve's version. But tell me what was your your reaction to that movie?
I watched it. I watched it years ago, but then I watched it recently, like a couple years ago when like the first one came out. Like I kind of like watched chunks of it, and then I skimmed through it again for this, this podcast. But I mean. Looking at the movie, it literally is like, it almost goes beat for beat.
Yeah, right.
Denis Dune, I was watching today and I was like, this is the movie. This is the same movie, but it's just done so much better in Denis' version. Of course, I don't know why. I mean, obviously we know why because it's just the vision, the scope. I guess also at the time, they had limitations in 1984, Even though like there are movies that look way better than Dune that came out in 1984, it's just something about the movie that it just looks so like, it doesn't look dark or moody. It's just very like there. You know what I mean? Like
I get what you're saying.
And the things that are crazy about
have his heart into it or something.
Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't a visual like the way Denis Dunes are is like it's like moody and dark and you like really get into like the world, but I felt like Lynch's is more cartoony in certain ways. Like the design is cool, is really like gross actually, and like the design of like the world and also like the way like the makeup stuff, like the way the Baron looks and it has his weird characters that he has in all his movies. I didn't realize too that he also wrote the movie, which is like what they like let him write it too. The hell. But anyway, but it's literally a beat for beat but it's just condensed. Like I literally, and it really like, is. This is why this movie doesn't work because by hour 2, Paul Atreides is already like becoming the one, and I'm like, bro, we didn't even get anything of like the build up to it. So
because like if you to compare it to Star Wars, which is what I assume that's what they wanted Dune to be.
They want it to be, yeah. Like
even Luke Skywalker wasn't like he wasn't the Messiah in the first film yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They built up to it.
So Dune the first, now obviously they're working from a book, so they're trying to, I guess, stay as close as possible. Although there are very big differences. Like the whole fighting style is just made up for the Lynch version, like that the weirding way stuff where they're screaming and they're shooting lasers out of their guns. I mean, I'm listening to the audiobook right now. I'm listening to an audiobook version, which is, I think, an unabridged version, which has actors and then the narrator at the same time, which is really cool. And the book is actually really interesting because, like, you forget that this book was, like, written in the 60s. Right. That's how, like, that's why I think books are, like, timeless, even compared to film. Because, like, I'll read a book from, I was listening to this, just, like, as an aside. The Yellow King is this novel. And it was like it's a very like Lovecraftian sort of like horror novel about people reading this book and they would lose their minds. And there was like talking about how New York City had suicide booths in it for people that didn't want to live anymore. And I was like, wow, this is a cool book. And I looked at the year of it, and the year was like the late 1800s or something, or the early 1900s. I was like, oh my God. It's so weird because the language isn't really different from how we speak now. It just sounded like a little bit more, polished. So when you see like stuff like Dune, it's obviously, I mean, it's a gigantic important series of books. My friend is obsessed with. He would always tell me to watch, read the books of Dune, and because I think there's more than like 10 books apparently. Right. 6 books written by the original guy,
Herbert.
Until he passed away. Frank Herbert wrote 6 books, and obviously the new Villeneuve movies. He says if it makes enough money, he gets to do Messiah. But anyway, my friend tells me just listen to the first, or just get the first 6 books. Don't bother because the rest is just like fan fiction. So when you see this, the Lynch version of Dune, and what kind of like he had a little way to play with the world of it, I guess. Even though when you watch Villeneuve's version, it's like no, there's a lot of like side by side comparisons that are almost like one for one sort of elements. Because when I went to watch Dune after seeing Dune 2, the Lynch version, I was like, wow, this is just like almost the same movie, up to a point, because it's just like they squashed it together. But the biggest part for me that I was like bugged out was her name in the book is Shani, but it's called Chani in the Villeneuve version. She has 0 personality in the Lynch version, and I was like, they could have gave her 10 minutes or something. And it's a pretty prominent actress. It's what is her name? Sean Young, and like she does nothing. She's gorgeous in the movie, but that's it. Like she has nothing. Like his sister, who's like Ali, I forget the name of that actress too. His little sister in the movie has more like character moments than Shani in the And apparently in the novel, she doesn't really have any. She really has no agency in the books at all. Shani's character. So when I'm part of this like Dune fan pages on like Facebook, because obviously I'm reading the books and now I'm watching the films and stuff like that, and there's a lot of people that hate how Shani comes off in this movie, the new Villeneuve version. I know we're jumping around here, but I'm just like, if she has no personality in the books and then she has personality in the film, what is the problem? Like they said that she sits there and she does nothing in the movie but complain, and I'm like, dude, she's fighting, all these other warriors in the Villeneuve version. Like, what is the problem? You know what I mean? People are stupid. But I thought Lynch's version was interesting up to a point. I think, like, after the first hour, it falls apart. Because basically, you're seeing a really, like, an alternate universe version. Obviously, it became before the Villeneuve version, but it's interesting. But, like, I will give him credit for stuff like, I liked the Baron in this version. Like, I don't know what you probably think it's too over the top.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, because I thought he was interesting because in the Villeneuve version, they're like black or white villains. Like, they're just completely, and obviously they're dark, super villains in the Lynch version. Sinister. But like, they took away aspects of like Harkonnen was like into little boys and stuff like that, like he is in the books. So he's like a super like perverted creep weirdo, but they took that out of this one. As far as I remember him acting any weird like that, but he's like over the top, like a Disney villain sort of thing. And I thought that was interesting.
There's one scene that I remember seeing that when we first meet the Baron. I think it's when his nephew comes in, played by Sting, and they just sit down, and then he like goes crazy on one of his like one of the ladies that like is like his slave or something. He like kills her. It happens. I think it also happens in Dune Part 2. Mm-hmm. But like the Baron, he like just like bites her or something, and he has blood all over him. Mm-hmm. The way it was done in Lynch's version was like crazy maniac type of thing that it's typical Lynch. Like he does that in his movies. Like his villains are like these crazy wackos. It's like kind of like Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet is like these really, and that's how the Baron is. You know what I mean? So that definitely that's interesting. You know?
Yeah, like when it's a bad, because it's two different types of performances from these actors. Like the guy in Lynch's version is like over the top menacing, and you know to be like, woof, you know what I mean? Like, I gotta stay away from this dude. Like that guy's like scary. And it's the same way in Villeneuve's version, but it's for completely different reasons, because he's more of a menacing sort of like a python that's ready to strike. And obviously he's like this big guy, and like they change even the way that he flies, because he's floating around in Lynch's version. That's the other thing that I remember besides the Duncan Idaho death, is him floating around, and it's more like fanciful. It's more fantasy the way he's flying around in that one. And this one, he's like, it's almost like robotic flying around, stuff like that. Yeah. And I think Lynch obviously had some interesting ideas, but he hated the whole process of the movie. He didn't get final cut. There's a 4-hour edit of the film on YouTube called the Spice Diver edit, where they took every missing scene and every scene from the TV version and they put it into a 4-hour film. So I might eventually watch that, because I'm so into, the whole Dune moment at this time. Mm-hmm. I'll let you know if it's any good. I doubt it'll be any better, but it's a way better film than the original one, because he obviously had scenes that he wanted to put in the film, and the movie company was like, no thanks. But I thought it was an interesting film. I don't think it's the greatest film. I thought Kyle MacLachlan was fine in it. Yeah. I think that was his first feature film. Like, I forgot Virginia Madsen was in it, and she's stunning is not even the right word for her, because she starts out the film, and it's just like that in the books, where I thought it was just some weird Lynch thing, because she starts out the film talking about the world, which I think is good. I think their world building is pretty good in the film, in that Lynch world.
It's decent, yeah.
As in having a primer, an explainer for anybody just kind of coming into the film, right? Totally. And, she's talking about the 4 planets and all that stuff, and that's how it is in the books, because in the novel, the first one, they're obviously just regular sort of chapters, and then it'll cut to her character, Princess Irulan, who's also played by the Florence Pugh. Excuse me. Pugh plays her. She's in the book. Princess Irulan is, in between chapters, will talk about the history of the characters. You're still reading what's going on, but her character's talking post.
Right. Gotcha.
Of this guy's life, of Paul Atreides' life. So it's really interesting. It's such an interesting book.
That's cool. But that's like something that works so well in a novel. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's perfect for a novel. That's why novels sometimes are so much better, because you can do stuff like that. In a movie, I don't know, you can try it, but like
it changes the tone of a film. It makes it real weird. Because Irulan's not doing that. She does it at the beginning of Dune Part 2. You know what I mean? Because they're introducing her character.
In the beginning.
But like in Lynch's version, it's weird, because people will have like running monologues by themselves. You hear people's thoughts, stuff I've never seen. I haven't seen in a film, I don't think, besides American Psycho. Do you know what I mean? Right. But American Psycho did that correctly. Like in this, people will just be in a scene and then be like, I can't believe he's doing this. And he's talking to himself. I'm like, what the hell is going on with this movie?
Yeah, that's the issue with this movie, is that it's so dated. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
But when we were talking in the beginning about like Dune being, George Lucas being inspired by it, I'm not saying that Star Wars sucks. Star Wars is amazing. No, of
course. Yeah,
especially the first trilogy, the original trilogy. But think about it. 1980, The Empire Strikes Back came out, and looks, feels 100 times better than Dune in 1984. So it's like, it's not that, and I said about like technology, and they could have done a better version of this movie that looked closer to like Empire Strikes Back, you know what I mean? But for some reason, there's something about this movie that just feels, I don't know, it feels
If
off.
Dune had the director of Empire Strikes Back, you think it would have been a better film?
No, I don't know. I don't even know if it was just the director. Maybe it was the budget. Maybe it was like who they hired to do the special effects, or like, those things, like all those things are factors in it, and it's like this one, just like when I looked at the movie, it's like this movie is supposed to be this science fiction epic, and it just feels like when they have scenes like where it's characters talking inside rooms, it just looks like a TV show from 1984, and I'm like, this needs to be epic, and it's not. And that's
Lynch
one of the biggest problems for me.
Was Lynch offered the Return of the Jedi? I know he was,
yeah, he
Empire
was.
Strikes Back. Okay,
well,
so that's
they had a meeting about it, but they had a meeting. Yeah, the third one. He was supposed to direct the third one.
Oh,
and Spielberg was also supposed to direct it too, which I wish that happened, but unfortunately it didn't. Mm-hmm. He was Lucas was like, I want you to direct the third one, and Spielberg was like, okay, I'll do it, and then the Directors Guild was like, you can't. I don't know, for some reason he couldn't direct it, but anyway,
weird. Anyway,
yeah,
they're lost. They're lost.
Seriously, bro.
Because I do think there are some really interesting design work that was done in Lynch's film. But
me too.
A lot of it falls apart. But
it's very industrial. It's very industrial, like the world of the what is the name of the bad guys? The
Harkonnens.
Harkonnens.
That is Gaiety Prime. Their planet.
Gaiety Prime. Like their whole world is very like Lynchian industrial. Like kind of like what his movies always are, like these, he always likes industrial areas, and that's how like their setting is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it feels very Lynchian in that sense.
So I don't feel like I wasted my time when I saw the film, because I think once you kind of dive into the world of Dune, like after you see the film, like, or if you read the book, obviously, I think you take what you can get, and thankfully we've gotten some good stuff out of it. Because I haven't watched the miniseries. I think it was for Sci-Fi Network, but I don't know if it's any good. Like people have said it's good, because I think it's obviously it adheres more to the novels, and they had time to tell the story.
They had time to do it. Yeah, exactly.
And I hear Children of Dune, which is one of the following books, which stars James McAvoy in it. And I hear that's really good. And I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I think it's interesting. I think once you're a fan of Dune, this world, like you have a wealth of at least film, works that you can watch, you know what I mean, that you can enjoy. And so far the fandom hasn't eaten itself, sort of like how Star Wars fandom is sort of like, you give them anything different, they'll lose their minds. Which I don't, I can't go against somebody that's like died in the wool Star Wars fan. I enjoy the world of it, but I can't really say that I've always been like, oh, crazy about Star Wars movies. But with Dune, I think now I'm finding out why it piques the interest of so many people. So I think, Lynch's movie, take of it what you will, it's obviously not a great film as an adaptation of a book. Obviously, if he had two films to adapt, who would have known what would have happened with that? He probably would have messed it up twice. But you were telling me you saw a little bit of Jodorowsky's Dune, right? What did you think about that?
Yeah, no, I saw the entire documentary. It was good. I mean, his vision was so, like, again, when I watched the documentary, I knew nothing of Dune. So right. They're like he's showing all these crazy designs, and I have no point of reference to say, right, damn, this is so far off from what the book is, or but his designs were insane. Like now that I'm looking back at it and like I see these movies now, this stuff could have been like, his stuff would have been out there. Like he was taking liberties, like these extreme liberties, and he would have made it more colorful. You know how Denise is more like muted and
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but his film would have been more like, kind of like Star Wars, but like a crazy version of it, where it had like these crazy like designs and stuff.
Yeah. So to go a little bit on that, obviously you know more about it than I have, because I was reading a little bit about what his differences in the book to the film are. He brought on people that would end up working, because I think it was like they tried to film it obviously long before any Lynch's version and stuff like that. And Jodorowsky, I have not seen any of Jodorowsky's films, so I'm a novice with Jodorowsky. He brought on people like H.R. Geiger, who went on to work on Alien, and then I believe
maybe Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon,
oh yeah, so
who's the writer of Alien. He was hired to design Dune, like the whatever, design the concept art and stuff. And he became the writer of Alien, and then he brought on Geiger. I guess he met him from that. You know what I mean? But they were all supposed to work, on this film. Like Jodorowsky like pulled in all these like creatives, like you said, and he just wanted all their ideas and was like gonna take all their ideas and put it into this film.
And so I looked at Mobius is this incredible artist. I mean, if you know, his name is Jean Mobius Giraud. I can't say if you've seen the film The Fifth Element. Imagine that
I know
guy,
his art.
Did all that stuff.
I know his art. Yeah.
So if you see the character designs, because I think he was doing the storyboards, and storyboards are gorgeous. I was reading some of the differences because apparently Jordorowsky didn't finish the Dune book and he just like stopped reading it. And so he started coming up with some like weird concepts, like the planet of Arrakis is alive and sentient and talking and stuff like that. And I was like, uh-oh. So there were like articles saying how great Jodorowsky's movie is, but I think people are come to an agreement that it's great because it's not a film and the idea of it is amazing. But some of the ideas that he was bringing to the table about how he radically changed it would have been like at least killing the fans of Dune, but not like, you know, a general audience. But I think it's an interesting sort of thing. So you said that the documentary is an interesting film because I don't know how a documentary could be good or bad, but I assume it's an interesting one at least.
Oh, it's a very good film. It's well made. And it's interesting as hell. It's like I love documentaries about movies like that never got made. Like there's a few of them out there. Yeah. I always find those so interesting because you're like, damn, what could have been? And so there's a
YouTube channel that I can't think of the name of it, but it goes about like Hollywood films that were never made, and it's like such an interesting. I'll think about that anyway. But it's always the idea that is like there's like a hope to it, right? There's a hope that you could have seen something different, but it just never gets made, and so you never have the ugly truth. And you always have this sort of lionized hero in your mind. So that's probably what it works out. So
and also, but real quick, like also like when you just hear about movies like that were in development, and then the movie that actually got made, but for some reason the ideas that they had originally were always kind of seemed better than what they ended up making. Yeah, I don't know if you think that too.
I know. I understand what you mean. It's the human element that always changes. It's like the phrase where you can have a script, a tight script, unless it's certain directors. Once an actor is brought in, it's almost like a complete rewrite because an actor will not psychically link up with the director and know exactly what they want, and sometimes they will give a different performance that the director finds better. Do you know what I mean? So like once a movie has human interaction in any case, it always changes and is never going to be what you want to see, or not what you don't want to see, but what you don't expect.
But I also think like those earlier ideas or earlier drafts of the script were like when the writers and whoever the creators were like very into it and passionate about it, and then once like it got interest from like a studio or something, that's when it starts to get watered down. And then that's when all the ideas that they had originally get like taken out. You know what I mean? I feel like that's also part of it too. Like you look at all these movies, they go, what this, a sequel, it was going to be this. And then it ended up being this. It's because like the studio comes in and they're like, for some reason studios, not for some reason, but they don't like to take risks in anything. You know what I mean? So it's very
rare you find a director that can 100% make
takes
the movie
it all the way.
He wants to. Like Tarantino, Fincher, Cameron, the people that you mentioned in the beginning. Yeah, Denis
Kubrick,
apparently now. By the way, the YouTube channel that I want to talk to you about is called Bullets and Blockbusters. That is a YouTube channel that I think is really important.
I know that, bro.
And it goes into films that were never made. It goes into depth about all these movies that were never made, and it's such an interesting channel. It's so good. So
hold on, I'm gonna check right now. I think I'm subscribed to it. Yeah, I'm sure subscribed to it.
Of course, it's a good channel. Hopefully, finding good cinema. Yeah, so
and the last video I saw was what could have been of The Dark Knight Rises.
Okay, I gotta check that one out.
If Heath Ledger didn't die, they would have brought the Joker back. Yeah. So I watched that video like 2 weeks ago.
I heard that Heath Ledger's Joker was supposed to be where the Scarecrow was in the judge part, but that might have been something I read wrong.
But watch this video. It goes more like he was actually supposed to be. He was supposed to come out when they broke out of the prisoners, but he was gonna be more than that. He was gonna be like the new villain, the third villain or whatever the fuck coming in.
See, that would have been cool. But so after you give us a like and subscribe, then go to watch Bullets. Let's just go watch that. Obviously, much more viewers on there. We need the viewers. But anyway, so that's Jodorowsky's Dune. So that what could have been. So now we get led into Denis Villeneuve's newest, I guess a modern science fiction classic. Depending on what you think about these two new Dune films. So he comes in on set. He gets obviously he was coming hot off of his other feature films. He's one of those directors that you're like, I mean, either you're with him or you're not. I think he's had more hits than he has. I mean, like, okay, how would you say his output is? I'm not talking about how his movies are made. I think his movies are obviously incredible. Like, he obviously had Sicario, Arrival, Prisoners. Those are the ones that are really well known. Obviously, he had films like Enemy and Incendies. It was his, like, really big breakout film. But
Blade Runner 2049.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't say that yet, because that wasn't a hit. That was like you know what I mean? That was
this is the thing that's misinterpreted, because it made money.
Right.
It did. It almost made $100 million domestically. That's a lot.
Okay.
But it's all compared to what they expected and how much money they put into it. So they say it's a failure, but technically, you know,
I'm grateful they gave him the chance to take hold of another science fiction movie.
What's a movie that just came out that was like a huge failure?
The Marvels.
Yeah, it wasn't like that or whatever.
Right.
Or it wasn't like The Flash, where it was like it just completely died and it was cost 250 million. This one, it almost like broke even, but they expected it to be like a big hit. That's why everybody calls it you know, whatever. But go ahead. Yeah.
But so anyway, but obviously he was coming off of Blade Runner 2049, which I think what happened is that although it did not live up to their expectations of like making money, because I would have seen 3 more Blade Runner. I would have seen any Blade Runner movie that he did from that. In fact, I started watching that. You saw the animated series, right? I saw 2 episodes in and I was like, okay, I don't need any more of this.
Nah, I didn't see it. I
thought you had watched it. But yeah, so Blade Runner 2049, like, I think it's a masterpiece. For me, it's a modern masterpiece.
No, it is. It is. It's a movie that almost, you know, it's as good or better than the first, which is
That's
rare.
What I say. Right. That's
you
what
know.
I say.
So it's like, for me, it's like it doesn't engulf you like the first one did. Like the first one almost puts a trance on you. It's just more mood. That's what the first one is. It doesn't have that much story. The second one has tons of story and mystery, and it has beautiful visuals. I mean, it's amazing, but it's like it's a little bit different. You know what I mean?
And it stands on its own. That's the important part. It stands on its own.
You don't need to watch the first one. You don't need to watch the first one. You know, like that could have been the first movie, and it could have just been a story that we didn't see happen. With Deckard and all that stuff.
Because there are a lot of films that do that. Like V for Vendetta did that too. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. But go ahead.
But I think his output, like he's had pretty much success his entire career after like Prisoners. Because Prisoners was a hit. What was his next movie after
and
that?
Enemy was a little bit underseen, I think, probably. And Enemy was probably more.
I think he did Enemy before that, though. He did it before Prisoners. It was like his.
They both came out 2013, so that's probably the same.
Okay, so yeah, but I think they filmed it like a year before, and it just took a while to come out. And then so he did Prisoners. He did
That must be like the Yorgos Lanthimos thing, because he just came out Pretty Things, but then the movie from 2022.
That's what I'm saying.
The new one that's coming out was filmed before that, maybe. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'm like, this guy has 2 films in almost the same year. But anyway, but then pretty much everything else, like Arrival was a surprise hit. Incredible movie. Sicario was also a hit. It was a modest hit, but it's a great film. You know, and it's like that's my favorite film of his is Sicario. But anyway, so he pretty much has been successful after Prisoners. He's been successful, with the exception of Blade Runner 2049, which people say which I understand. You know what I mean? But after that, you know, even Dune Part 1 that came out pretty much right after the pandemic still made money.
It came out basically during the pandemic. It was in 2021. Yeah, right. Towards the when has it ended, by the way? I'm not sure. But it came out when Max was like, we're not going to make money with this film, so we're going to put it day and date release, cinema and television on HBO Max. And when you see that happen, you're like, uh-oh. Like, you know, you're like, oh, no. But it had enough. It made enough, I think, cinema-wise, I think it made I don't know how much it made. It made enough like that. This one just beat it. I think worldwide it was like 400 something million or something like that altogether.
Yeah.
And this one, well, let me just go into Dune. Let's just go into the first Dune film Villeneuve does. Your short idea on it. What were your thoughts when you first saw it?
My first thought was, first of all, I went into it knowing nothing of Dune. Just those little memories I had, and maybe I seen the first one 20 years ago.
Same way, yeah. Same for me.
The first thought I thought was like, oh, I know where George Lucas got Star Wars from, because there was so many things in the first like 20 minutes that I'm like, this is Star Wars. Star Wars, like the whole thing about like the voice, and the voice is like that's the Jedi mind trick.
I didn't even put that together. You're right.
And that's the thing that stood out for me. I was like, oh shoot. I was like, he really, wow, okay. And then I kind of like, and it just, the movie does such a great job of like bringing you into the world and explaining it. Like, and the funny thing is there's the scene where Paul in the beginning of the first Dune, he's studying about Arrakis is the Dune planet, right?
Caladan is the first planet that they're on, but their own planet.
The planet that he's going to is Arrakis.
Is Arrakis, yeah.
Right, so he's studying about it, so when he gets there, he knows, which is also in David Lynch's Dune. They do almost the same thing, and I'm like, but this one is done so much better. Like it's just like it's like drawn out, and it's like brings you in little by little, and you start getting the characters, and so that's that, and of course, obviously, like the visuals, the scale that he does is like amazing. Like in the first half hour when like they leave the planet, there's that shot of like the ship coming out of the water, and I'm like, all right, I'm in this world, bro. And then from then on, the movie just was amazing. I started to learn about like the lore and what was it about, and like what everything is, because I always just knew little like ideas of what Dune might be just from hearing stuff and then from watching like little things. So I never knew the entire picture until I saw the film,
So imagine if Star Wars never left Tatooine, like the sand planets and stuff like that. And that's what basically the Dune cinema. So you can go in a way and be like, oh man, there's not really much difference in land. So you're almost watching just actors pretend that they're on in these different worlds. But there's such good production design in this movie, and it's obviously borrowing off of Eastern and Middle Eastern looks to it because it's a sand planet. And having listened to the book, and I'm rewatching the first film, and they have there are animals in these planets. You don't really see them. There are bulls because there's like a whole matador reference because that's what's in the novel and stuff like that. And the book is actually very good, so people should just read the book in general. But
and then he also has a head of a bull in his like what's his name? Paul's father. I forgot the character's name, but it's
Duke Leto Atreides.
Duke Leto, okay. So you could tell that that's like a sport that they do or whatever.
Yeah, right. In Caladan, and it's like because it's obviously his father's played by Oscar Isaac, who's great in anything, and he's great. What's weird is like Oscar Isaac was like the guy before Pedro Pascal became the guy. Isn't that is that just me? Yeah. It's like we don't have time to focus on one Latino actor for some reason in this in Hollywood. But anyway, he's so good, Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto Atreides, who doesn't have that much time in the book. Like they added maybe just one more extra scene for him in the film to give him that sort of father and son bonding talk, when they're walking around those boxes and the sand stuff like that. So good, like his scene where he has to, which is just like in the book too. He has that poison tooth that shoots out the gas, and just like Rebecca Ferguson, who's great, and it's so funny because it feels like Rebecca Ferguson has kind of always been there, although I can't remember seeing any older Rebecca Ferguson films because I believe she's younger or the same age as us, and I was just like, she's so good and she's so regal in her performance, and just like. Every movie that she's in is just she's so good because obviously she was in Doctor Sleep, that the adaptation of the Stephen King novel as Rose the Hat in that, and then she was great in the Mission Impossible films, and I'm like they need to keep her in those films because she has such good screen presence that she's equal to Tom Cruise in those films. You know what I mean? It's just like she's that I think important.
The
and
first
I
time
don't
you
wanna spoil
see
anything
her,
and I don't want to spoil anything for those movies, but they're
in the Mission Impossible movies, like I think the first time was she in Fallout? Was that the first one she was in?
I believe she was. Yeah.
I think it was Fallout, and even I didn't even know who she was at the time, and I'm like, this girl is just interesting. She's just like
you're just like,
show,
whoa, you know those actors that sort of like, because you get a second like that too. You remember Vanessa Kirby, the blonde woman that comes in? I think it was after Fallout. She was like it's one of those like whiplash moments. She's like, who is this actor? Because they just stand out. But Rebecca Ferguson is so good. Even people have like, for some reason, but it's mostly like problems with Zendaya for a multitude of reasons, because it's their issue. But Zendaya as Shani is great in the movie, because people are giving crap about it, but she got a lot of crap because she was in those kind of like, and for me, I think you agree that the Spider-Man movies from the MCU are not particularly good, well made. They're fine made movies, but they're not the best.
They're solid.
But
and she's good in it too.
They're not Sam. Yeah, she is.
No,
but they were giving her issues because she doesn't look like the Mary Jane from the comic books and stuff like that.
Oh,
you know what I mean? That thing. That Mary Jane role was kind of cursed, because even Kristen, the first Mary Jane from the Sam Raimi films, Kirsten Dunst got crap for it because she wasn't like. I remember she was the actor who played Spider-Man was on Howard Stern, and they were goofing on her looks. And she's not as hot, and he was like, Tobey Maguire was pissed off, bro. He was pissed. And then when they had the Amazing Spider-Man movies with the ones from Sony that came after, obviously it's all Sony anyway, but the second film series with the excellent actor in it, they had that actress who was
Emma
in
Stone?
No, the movie that you liked a lot that had George Clooney in it, the one about the wife that was in a coma because she was cheating on him. One of the daughters of that movie. I forget what her name is, but one of the daughters in that movie, she ended up dating this famous like baseball player. But anyway, she was in. They had one shot of her, like paparazzi shot of her walking, and she might have had her face, because people don't look like Hollywood movie stars if you look at them in the wrong way of a photograph.
Right.
You can't control that. And the internet went so crazy for that poor girl, they wrote her character out of the movie. And now, and then Zendaya was facing the same stuff with the MC version of the Spider-Man movies. But she's obviously has a following, and she's won like a bunch of Emmys, for her acting. She's a solid actor. She was
But that's the thing. She's good. She's really
great,
good. She's not like just like blasé.
This is someone who came from like I think it was Nickelodeon she came from. I wasn't know if it was Nickelodeon, or maybe it was Disney Channel she came from. But she was like supposedly the second banana to this other actress who ended up sort of like her career sort of was obliterated. She got into Euphoria for HBO, which a lot of people love, but the internet hates for some reason. And in this film, she's a great pairing for Timothée Chalamet, and Chalamet is an excellent lead in this film, because like I had no real history of Chalamet films besides obviously Dune 1, and because I never saw Call Me by Your Name, although I hear it's great. We saw that film, the one where he's a cannibal, the Bones and All, excellent movie. And for me, that was the first like time I really saw him in anything. That was the second time I saw him in anything. And obviously I saw Dune 1, then I saw Bones and All, and I was like, he's great. Like it was different from his performance in Dune, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then in Dune 2, he gets to take a little bit more of that on. So by the time of the ending of Dune 2, and you see him become this sort of maniacal leader, it's just like this guy really has it, for the fact that people went to go see Wonka. I have no interest in. Do you have interest in seeing Wonka? Myself, I don't. I would give it a chance because he was in this. You know what I mean? That's how good of an actor he is.
I'd give it a look. It's on HBO Max right now, and I want to click on it, but then I'm like, I don't know.
If you pay for Max, you might as well see it to take advantage of it, right?
I guess. But
you're not running to it, but pickings is slim these years. But he's fantastic, and the fact that I would go watch that movie because he's so good in this, and I have no care in the world for like Willy Wonka. Sorry, Willy Wonka fans. Shows something, because I think his portrayal is so good, because this character is 15 years old. He's 30 years old. He still looks 18 or 19 years old. When I found out he was 30, I was like, what? Like, Timothée Chalamet is 30, and that reminds me how old I am. And what would you say works about Timothée Timothy's performance in the first film, at least?
He just plays it perfectly. I mean, he's sort of like reluctant, but you could tell that he has a strength. You know what I mean? And like he knows that he has to live up to, his father, and he has to, and he's not ready in the first one. In the first one, he's sort of like, Duncan Idaho is sort of like his like, who's Duncan Idaho and the other guy, I forgot his name. Josh Brolin plays. I forgot the character's name, but they're kind of like his mentors.
Yeah, Jason Momoa is playing Duncan Idaho, and Josh Brolin is playing Gurney Halleck.
Gurney, okay, and then so they're like he's like sort of like their Timothy's Paul Atreides' mentor, and trying to teach him like, that first scene where Josh Brolin is fighting with him with the shields, and he's like, he ends up they both end up killing each other, but he's like kind of teaching him like what you need to do. So he's like he knows that he has to step up to. Eventually he has to step up, you know what I mean? And he's having these like visions of, the world that they're going to go to and of Zendaya too. And so, I mean, his character, the way he played it in the first one was, really, it was amazing because he brought you in, to the world and you kind of followed him along the way. And you saw him like start to develop throughout the film. And then it gets even more developed in part 2, you know what I mean? So, right. I mean, and on top of that, he's just a good actor, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
A good actor is someone that when you watch their performance, it doesn't seem like they're acting. It seems like it's just natural and real, and that's how he, performs.
An interesting thing, too, is Stephen McKinley Henderson. He plays Thufir Hawat. He was in the first film, and there was people very much complaining in this about him not appearing in the second film because he's still alive. Like so I wondered why he's the guy. If you saw Beau is Afraid, he was the therapist for the Beau character.
Oh yeah, that's right. He wasn't in the second one.
Right, he was the first one because he was still alive. Because remember, in Lynch's Dune, he's still alive because they fed him a slow acting poison because. He's what's called a mentat, which is very like sort of a person has powers like he had in the movie where he was able to like his eyes would do this weird white rolling up thing in his head, and he always in the book which they obviously they have to like they have a lot of story to cover so they couldn't really do it, but because Rebecca Ferguson's character, who's Lady Jessica Atreides, she was never really Duke Leto's wife, she was a concubine, but he was just in love with her. It's sort of mirrored by why Timothée Chalamet's Paul stays with Shani, even though he has to marry somebody else. Like Shani is his real love. But this guy, Hawat did not trust Lady Jessica because the Bene Gesserit are these sort of space witches. That's what they call them, because these are very like, and you see the ladies at the beginning of the movie, like in Lynch's version, and even this one, the one who gives the box for Timothée Chalamet to put his hand and stuff like that. They're sort of like, there's some weird broads, you know what I mean? Totally. So, Charlotte Rampling playing, Reverend Mother Moheim, she's a phenomenal actress, regardless.
Yeah, she is. You know what's funny? If she would have also played it in David Lynch's Dune,
I thought
she was casting. For some reason, I thought she was, and she just reprising her role.
It's just sort of that British woman sort of thing.
She's a great actress. She's in this movie with what's his name? The Verdict. Paul Newman.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's an amazing film, but she's in it. I always remember from that movie. But you know what's funny? That film. I mean that scene when he puts his hand in the box. The one Lynch's version is very like.
They show
gruesome.
it. They show his hand.
It's gruesome,
like getting thrown apart and stuff like that.
Exactly.
In his mind, at least.
In his mind, but I kind of like that about the first one. But
I did too. I did that too. Because they had to leave it more to the imagination in this one, like because you want to see his hands exploding. You know what I mean? You want to see what you figure. But anyway, back to Howard. He's kept alive because Baron Harkonnen finds him important because the David Dastmalchian character, Peter DeVries, that creepy guy that dies in the assassination scene
in the room.
Like, he was the guy. He was his mentat. So like that's why they keep him. But it's not brought up in the second film, and I don't know whether if it was cut. And Villeneuve is one of those directors that said you'll never see a director's cut from me. What you see in the cinema is what it is. So he's like hardcore director that doesn't want. Is Fincher like that too? Right? So it's sort of like
he's pretty much
what you see is what you get.
He never does.
But that's why a lot of people were a little upset.
Well,
I think they
Zodiac has a director's cut, but I don't know if he approved that. But whatever. But
okay.
9 times out of 10, he doesn't have extra versions or whatever the case.
Fair enough. Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Vladimir. What'd you think of him?
Amazing, bro.
Yeah, he's great. He's great in everything. He's always great. He's one of those actors where you just it's good, and his sperm was so powerful he rooted off 3 other actors that were as good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember just randomly watching. I don't go out to watch BBC shows. I watched a small mini series called River about him. Detective that he's
right?
He's a detective and he's trying to figure out who killed his partner, and that was good. And I was like, this guy's he's just too good. He's like the best part of those terrible Thor movies. You know what I mean? So it's just like, he's so good in it. Jason Momoa is fun in the movie, but I think Jason Momoa is playing Jason Momoa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you watch, he was great in this though. He was perfect for this.
I think he's a good actor, bro, in anything.
Yeah, I think so too.
I really do.
No, I think he has charisma.
Yeah.
He's a very charismatic guy.
And he's not like he doesn't have charisma and then like a shitty actor. Like he has charisma and then he also is like he's a good actor. Like I told you, I watched that series C.
Oh, right.
And it's an amazing, like the 3rd season was not as good as the first 2, but like his performance in that is so good, bro.
Okay.
But anyway, I think he's a great actor. I think he's underrated.
Obviously, Josh Brolin is great, and he'd worked with Villeneuve in Sicario. There was a sequence in part 2. You remember the part where Paul, is becoming this hero to these people from Arrakis, the Freemen, who are the Fremen, but and then he puts on his father's ring after he's taken the role as Lisan al-Gaib, which is like the religious thing. And then it cuts to Josh Brolin's face, and it's a tiny, subtle act that you could see that he almost comes to tears because he's so proud of Paul kind of manning up. Although Paul has never, wimped out in the movie at all that I can remember. But I think the fact that he merged it and he took his father's place, because I think I think what Gurney was worried about is that he was just going to become the savior of these people without, respecting the House Atreides.
Yeah, respecting or any connection to it. Yeah,
when he sees him put that ring on and just that look on his face, like that's why Josh Brolin is so damn good in this movie. I think that's and obviously Javier Bardem. He's different from the first film to the second one. Stilgar, because there was no real comedy in the first movie, but it's very evident that Javier Bardem is like the funny guy in this movie. It's not like he's telling jokes or being goofy or anything like that. And it was funny when they offered him the role. Bardem said, I'd only do it if I get to ride a sandworm. And obviously they haven't put a sandworm in the movie. I don't think he would not have taken the movie. Like, obviously, I think he would have taken them. Even the guy, Chang Chen, who played Yui, Dr. Yui, the one who... He has such a striking look to him. Like, he looks like he looks like a singer or something. But he looked great in that movie. But with this one, it's like a nice wide array of different people. Very different Dr. Kynes, who was played by The Exorcist in the first one. I remember watching the Lynch version because by the time I had seen the second one, I kind of forgot about Kynes' character in the movie. In the first one, it's played by Sharon Duncan Brewster, and I remember there was a little people complaining about her being a black woman in the movie. I was like, oh brother, Jesus, just leave it alone. It's a movie about space people. And I remember when I watched the Lynch version, and then I was like, wow, it's this guy from The Exorcist, and he's gone like 5 minutes. I was like, yo, what happened? Like, this guy's a good actor. Why? I thought they would have given him Stilgar, but they gave it to the guy from Twin Peaks. It was great too. So I think the first.
Well, the whole cast of Twin Peaks is in there, but anyway.
Oh yeah, right. Well, was there anything in the first film that didn't work for you?
To be honest, bro, no.
Yeah,
not really. I mean, I have things that didn't work for me in the second film, and I think the second film is a better film, which is weird to say, but
it's a strange thing because I think the first film obviously has, and I think this is obviously by design. I think the first one has a better world building in it, and the second film sort of like isn't paying attention to the rest of the world and is just telling this big action epic
it's
film.
not concerned with that. Yeah.
So one doesn't work without the other, I think. I mean, doesn't work. I think they're entertaining both, obviously. They're both great films. But I think that have you just seen the second film, like, without any of the information of the first film, you obviously clearly you wouldn't know what the hell's
it
going
wouldn't
on,
work.
really.
It wouldn't work at all. It wouldn't work at all because
the issue with the first film is that where it ends off. Because I remember if we had never gotten the sequel, I would have been like, "What the hell?" Like, I would have been so upset.
But the movie has the title Part 1 in it, so
right.
Like, I know there was people complaining about that when it first came out, and I was like, "These people are dumb," because I'm like, "Dude, it says Part 1. Even if we don't get to Part 2,
right? You
understand that why they ended it that way. You know, like, you're going in knowing this. You know that it's going to be a Part 2, so." I didn't have an issue with that. I was like, it ended actually in a good area because it left it, like, you know, wanting more. But it's a crazy thing. Like, I feel like that film, like, obviously it probably has, if I really look deep into it, probably has a couple flaws that I was like, oh, maybe this, maybe this.
Sure.
But I really, thinking about it in sort of a general way, I was like, no, the film worked completely for me in every aspect. Like, I didn't have any issues with it. The second one for me is like, it's a different animal. It's like, the second one is like going on all cylinders. It's like, we're not even going to screw around with the world building anymore. Now we're going to get into the story and into the action and into like the really meaty stuff. That's what makes it a better film in that sense. But then I feel like there's certain things that kind of like the ending. I don't know if you want to get into, like, it's all right to just jump around because we're not really doing this anymore.
It's totally, order. I was just going to, before we got into what you're going to say, it was the two actors that I wanted to go before we go into that part, was Babs Olusamokun, who played Jamis. That's the last guy that Paul fights to kind of prove himself. That's where I'm up to in the novel. When he fights Jamis, that's the last guy that he fights. And bests him, and then the Fremen are sort of like, oh, I guess he's the real deal. And then obviously Dave Bautista puts in another excellent acting role in this film. He's he's like a wrestler that's like, I wouldn't even call him a wrestler anymore. He's an actor that he's an actor, completely shed that film, because obviously with Guardians of the Galaxy, and you said Knock on the Cabin was decent, right?
Oh,
and then was he good in that?
He was good in that? Yeah, he was good. He was good, man.
So please jump into what you were going to say.
So, my issues, I'm going to just say my issues with Dune Part 2 before we talk about how great it is, was that you brought it up.
Fair enough, yeah,
David Bautista, like, I felt like he was a little bit wasted in this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, now, I don't know if they're sticking to this, you know, the source material.
No, because like none of that happens in the second book.
I feel like
in the movie that doesn't happen apparently.
He had a lot of moments to be really like he was kind of brutal in the second one is a much more brutal film. Like, there's like a lot of things that are happening. Like, they're just killing people. Obviously, we'll talk about Austin Butler's, you know, character. Like,
right. That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah. I think that's why he's kind of scuttled off to the side, honestly.
Right. But I mean, like, Austin Butler doesn't come into like almost an hour into the movie, maybe more. I'm like, you could have had Dave doing more stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's a scene where he literally runs away, and I'm like,
that wasn't. That's not in the book. He doesn't fight Gurney Halleck in the book, apparently. And what happens in Lynch's movie is what happens. The Emperor comes on and cuts his head off, and that's it. So I think that's what Villeneuve was like, sort of like, oh, because it's not in the book, I gave him enough for he has to fight Halleck, so Halleck has some sort of closure since, you know.
But even that fight that he had with Gurney was anticlimactic. It wasn't like that needed to be a really...
Yeah.
That needed to be like Paul's fight with... what's the guy's name? What's his name?
Fade Routher.
Fade Routher. That's how that fight needed to be. No. But anyway, that's one of my
I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, because he was so set up well as a bad guy to kind of get pushed to the side for the new bad guy with Austin Butler. And I think, like you had said, it was so funny because I was like, this is the first real Austin Butler movie I saw. And you're like, no, you saw him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was like, oh yeah. I guess he's good at, sort of disappearing because for some reason I misremembered him as Adam, what's his name from the Star Wars movies? You know what I'm talking about, even though he was in the movie. Adam something. Adam Driver, he's running around with a horse. So, like, I just sort of misremembered. Was Adam Driver in that movie? Was he in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or am I misremembering the complete
No,
film?
he wasn't in that. He wasn't in that.
Okay, so I sort of mixed them. He looked a little bit like Adam Driver if you closed your eyes a little bit. But, so I think, but let's get into Fade Routher, who was played by Sting in the Lynch version, one of the worst actings I've ever seen, even for that movie. It's terrible. Yeah. I like some of Sting's music, but
I like his look. I like his look in the movie.
Yeah. They all had a really unique. I mean, they kind of keep to the palettes. Like they all had red hair, and they were all sort of like fey-looking guys. And in this, they're all like just like completely not bleached out skin, because when they're off Gaiety Prime, they sort of are like still pale, but they all keep to like this black look. They have these cool looking like cannibal like girlfriends and stuff. The Gaiety Prime world looked really interesting. When I saw it in the trailer the first time, I was like not sure, because it looked like something out of the Star Wars prequel movies. Because Fade-Rauth is in this like sort of Roman, like Colosseum. And I was looking at it, and it looked like bad special effects from the trailer. They fixed it up for the movie, but in the trailer, it's just like obviously everything was CG, and you can't really do this stuff. And you could if you had the time for it, but I was just these graphics. I was like, because it was all black and white, because they have a black sun in their planet in this version at least. Yeah. And I was like, but when I saw the movie, I was like, okay, it works perfectly fine. And what did you think about Austin Butler's Fade-Rauth?
Oh, I thought that entire sequence, when they introduced him, was it was amazing. Yeah. Just the energy and the way, like,
I wish we had more with him, honestly.
Yeah, like the Coliseum, like everybody was just like cheering, and then it was like, and then he fights off all the guys, and he's like brutal,
mostly drugged. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an amazing sequence. This is the thing about this movie. It has set pieces that are like classic, that are now going to go down in history as like some of the best set pieces you've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think his character was amazing. I mean, again, I even think his character was a little bit wasted. Like, I feel like so we needed more. We needed more of him.
That's what they have the books for, man. But it's like you want to see it on screen, yeah.
I want to see it on screen, bro.
Yeah, for sure. Because like when I saw Leah Seydoux, who is like a real life comedian.
I forgot she was even in there.
Right. She changes in every film that she's in, and she's playing Lady Margot Fenring, who's part of the Bene Gesserit, which are the space witches that are, because here's the thing, because I guess it was it might have been mentioned in the book, the film, but I might have forgotten it. But what happened was Lady Jessica was, because the Bene Gesserit trained her in their ways, she was supposed to have a female offspring for the Harkonnen's son, like, so they can have a offspring to rule be an emperor. Do you know what I mean? Which is weird, because when we find out that Lady Jessica actually is a Harkonnen, then it's like, I guess it's some sort of weird incestuous kind of thing. And obviously people on the internet took it and ran for it. And they're like, oh, there's some sexual tension because Paul Atreides was supposed to be a woman and he really loves Fade-Rauth. And I'm like, you're kind of reaching for this. But that's the whole point. That's why they're trying to make a female sort of a perfect, and sorry to use this kind of phrasing, but a perfect like womb for Harkonnen blood. Do you know what I mean? That's what they were basically doing, so they can kind of control the Harkonnens and then rule the world. Because the interesting in the book is they lay it out very clearly, and Lynch's version lays it out good too, that the Harkonnens used to control planet Arrakis because they did all the spice mining, and spice is this stuff that's in everything. It's like, it's in the food, it helps like boost like weapons and stuff like that. I might be wrong about the weapons, but it's basically in everything. And then the Emperor set up, which is clearly explained in the second film, the Emperor set up because he was afraid that Paul Atreides, or Duke Leto Atreides, was going to get so much power that he would overshadow him. And he set him up to get killed. And then, the Harkonnens can take back the world and do whatever they want. So that was the whole point of that, which is explained pretty well in the second film. And I was like, oh, okay, they got it right. And this is only because I read the book after, because I'm sort of slow with taking information and sometimes. And then Princess Irulan, played by Florence Pugh, she's great in her sort of chapter reveals, at least in the opening of the film. And I think what happened is that she wasn't sure if she was going to be in this film, but Villeneuve told her basically, because Shani is not a gigantic character in the first film either, but he told the actress who plays Shani, he was like, listen, Zendaya, I know you might not have a lot of material to work with in the first film, but I'll give you a lot to work with in the second film. And she had a lot to work with in the second film. And that's what he told Florence Pugh. He said, listen, Pugh, you're not going to have a lot to do in the second film, but in the third film you will. And if you listen to the books, she's like partially narrating the whole book. So I think that's a really good choice because Florence Pugh is a really good actor. And obviously the first time I saw her was in Midsommar. She was even good in the Black Widow film. I have a soft space for the Black Widow. I like the Marvel films that are like the down to earth ones, the ones where it's more like
political thriller or something.
That's what yes, thank you. Jeez.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell I'm thinking. But also we had Christopher Walken as the Emperor, so I think he was semi-retired. What do you think of Christopher Walken in the movie?
I mean, he was his
character was supposed to be 70 years old but look 30. So I think they just they wanted a emperor who was 70 and looked 90. So him, but I think he was fine. So I thought like, and there was it Suhila Yakub who plays Shishakli? Was that the one that was? There was a young woman that was like always with Shani, her friend. That was sort of like to give her somebody to talk to through the movie, and she was great too.
Right.
Everything that you could have wanted, where you sort of with films that have to worry like trilogies and stuff like that, they got to worry about world building, and then the second movie they still got to do world building. They were released of the chains of world building in the second one because they gave that little peppy talk in the beginning about the Emperor has set this up, and now we know Paul Atreides has the whole world against him, and he has to prove himself to a bunch of people that believe in him and the other half don't. So the Fremen are these people that live on planet Arrakis, and they're very much of an Eastern religion sort of, or Middle Eastern religion sort of background to them. That's what I assume Frank Herbert took his idea of these people. And and we have Stilgar as like a true believer. He's just a true believer. And then I like the fact that they make Jessica sort of this, like, you see her Bene Gesserit ways. Like, she's conniving. Like, even if he really is what they say he is, like the Stilgar in them, she's still, I gotta make these people like him. I gotta make these people worship him. And it's such an interesting political dynamic that you see in real life with people using religious, like, handicaps to be like, oh, I believe this, even though the person obviously doesn't believe this stuff, just so they can have more followers. You know what I mean? Although Paul is, I think, a good enough guy that we'll get to that in a second. But Paul is somebody that believes in respecting these people, that he wants to be in their ways.
Right. But that's the thing that I really enjoyed about this film, was that it was so of the time. Like it could really relate to the time that we're living in now, because obviously that's a thing that's like universal throughout time, is there's always like issues with religion and non-believers and believers and like cults or whatever the case may be. And I feel like that's what the film is kind of about, because it's these two sides that one doesn't believe and one does, and they both have good points in certain aspects. You know what I mean? Obviously, I agreed with like Zendaya's part, in where she was like, I don't believe any of this stuff. But it's interesting to me that a movie that's based on a book from the 60s and then takes place in like 10,000 still are dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with today. And
I'll blow your mind like, even more.
They could have made
a second about that, but go ahead.
Yeah. But they could have made the film be very like alien, like where like we don't know anything, like there's like crazy shit happening that doesn't relate to society. But I guess because we're human, stories are always gonna take something from society. But I just really enjoyed that about the second one more than the first. Was that it had those issues going on, like there was the believers and the non-believers, and then they had this person that they were looking towards to be their savior, and it's like the same thing. Like we can relate to that stuff.
Yeah, and it's important for Lady Jessica and Paul to get the numbers on their side. That's the whole point, because they have such a bloodlust to destroy the Harkonnens. Like, Paul is at least going, yeah, I want to, follow what these people do. I want to be part of their lives and stuff because this is my new home. But Lady Jessica's like, no, we're going to get rid of these Harkonnens. Like, she's like, whatever it takes. Sure, yeah, do whatever this. I'll become their reverend mother, because there's a point where she also evolves as a person, because she's very competent in her own way, because of the training that she's done as a Bene Gesserit, that she drinks, I think, bile from the sandworm and that like gives her. That's why like in the first film, Paul, because spice affects these people so much, you see the Fremen have these blue eyes. They're like blue on blue eyes. And once you take enough spice in your system, that's how they're affected. And then what happened with Paul is that kind of activated the psychic, you know, compartment in his mind. So he was able to see in the future. And that's why he has that's a really big point in the film, is that he's trying to fight becoming in something that he doesn't want to be, because he says if he, you know, takes this Lisan Gaib road, it's going to lead to the deaths of millions or billions of people. Like his power reach is going to kill everybody basically. And that's his main thing. So it's an interesting sort of idea. And what Frank Herbert does, and I don't know if thing is, I don't want to spoil, because I know what I've read about points of it, and I don't know what happens in the books. I know there's some weird shit that happens in the books, but apparently Paul's not the good guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he turns into a straight villain or anything like that, because I don't know anything about what happens in the future books. But apparently what Frank Herbert did is, because people didn't understand when Dune 1 came out, they were like, oh, he's great. But what Frank Herbert did, I think, in Messiah, the second book, because Dune 1 is these two films, that's a very long book.
Right.
Is that these people become blindly religiously following this man, something you can see in real life. And Paul, necessarily, because he knows what's going to happen if he does these things, he still goes ahead and does it, and these people follow him blindly. And I think Frank Herbert, and I could be wrong, but Frank Herbert was supposed to be like, no, see, this is what happens when you follow somebody blindly. So I don't know. I haven't read Messiah yet, but that's apparently the big game that he's going into.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that makes sense, because in reality, that's kind of how it is. You know what I mean? Like,
it's sad.
People get behind someone. It is sad, and it's sad that it's like transcending into like the year 10,000 and it's still going on. You know what I mean? But it's crazy. I mean, that's what I got from the movie. Like when I was watching, I was like, man, this is interesting. These little, you know, Javier Bardem's character, the way he's so like, you know, at first he's kind of like reluctant, he doesn't believe it, but then when he finally sees like evidence of it, then he's like completely in on it. I mean, he's like, he believes in Paul, and then he's completely everything. You know, he's funny because his lines are like, everything that happens, he's like, that's a sign. You know, and then when you look at it, you're like, that's how people act.
Because like we are laughing about it, but if you sit down and think about it, you're like, oh no, because you and I
it's a little scary.
Long conversation before we even recorded this about the stuff that's going on. We're just like, ooh, like, so those people in real life, we're like, what an idiot, but in the movie, we're like, that's funny, but you know,
yeah, it's funny in the movie, but not in real life.
No, it's not.
Like, Javier Bardem is literally representing people that exist today. You know what I mean? So I found that part interesting about the movie, and I think that's why I liked it better than the first one. Mm-hmm. And again, the second reason that I liked it better was because, again, it's just like the action sequences. Like this is when we're like, okay, we're gonna give you great sequences on top of the great story. You know what I mean? Like that first scene, that first opening scene, I was like, all right, I know I'm already watching a great movie.
Yeah.
After the prologue, when they you know, they tell the story a little bit, they get into that whole scene where it takes place right after the first film, where they're carrying the guy that he killed.
Right.
And then it's like, it's all red.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like they get attacked by the
Sardaukar?
What's their names?
Oh no, the Harkonnens are the ones that are
the Harkonnens. They get attacked by the Harkonnens, and they have those cool black
when they
suits
fly
like
up to the ship. Oh, I was just like,
and they just like hover.
God, that was so
I was like,
cool.
this is an amazing an amazing opening sequence.
Because the army that they were fighting towards the end of this were the Sardaukar, which is the Emperor's guys, who were the most feared people.
Guys, right.
But the Sardaukar, like that's the whole point why they wanted the Fremen so badly on their side, is because they didn't know, like the Emperor and the Harkonnen didn't know that there were this many Fremen, and that's obviously in Lynch's version too. Right. So when they come out, and they just start slashing everybody, because you know the power of them, because the movie does a time jump midway through the film. I think it was like 2 years that they jump in the film itself.
Yeah.
Because you see that the Fremen are like destroying all the spice, you know, extractions by the Harkonnens, and it's really cool. But
wait, hold on. Do they do a time jump?
they do.
I mean, do they tell you?
There's a time jump. Yeah, there's a time jump in the film.
No, but did they tell you?
They say something about like I've been for 2 years or something like that. There's definitely it happens in the film.
They don't do like a title card.
No. They just talk about it. Yeah.
There was some people that are a little bit confused about that.
No, I know for sure.
I read something.
I remember that happening in the film because I hadn't seen that in a long time.
No, because it has to be because then they know how to fight.
Yeah.
Like he's trained them already.
Yeah.
So there has to be a time jump. You know what I mean?
It's not like Lynch's
the thing is, like, I know
they
this.
do that in Lynch's version too, right? Am I mixing both?
Oh, I don't know.
Might be
I
mixing
didn't.
both.
I don't remember that. I know the second one. There's a time jump, but they don't necessarily
Right.
like spell it out for you. You know. But another thing about part 2 is that the ending, the climax of the movie, which is I mean, they both, Lynch's version and Dune Part 2 kind of have the same climax.
Yeah.
Like it ends with him fighting.
Although I will say there's something cool that happens at the end of Lynch's version that I thought was great, but I mean it's totally out of left field. You know, when it starts raining, like I was like, that's pretty dope.
Okay.
Like if Dune 2 would have ended like that too, I think that's what
dope.
I say is I think the ending visuals for Dune, Lynch's Dune is better, just in a small aspect, because
I get you.
Because it rains and you're like, oh, this is the real deal. Like this is like. It was cool because it's all sand, and then it starts raining at the end because they don't have any water besides the water they drain from people's body, which is also a cool thing in the film.
Right.
But in this one, it ends like the girl with the dragon tattoo. So it's still open-ending, and like,
right, it's open-ended.
I honestly didn't like that. I understood why they did it with her because she's sort of like this person going, I can't believe this is happening. You know, my man is a maniac or whatever, or he's turned crazy. And it just shows her walking away, and I saw them, and I was like, like that was the only thing that I thought that was like not really that well done when she like walks off and the movie ends on her face. Like, if it ended sort of like how Lynch's version, and not with rain coming on there necessarily, they'll probably do that for a third movie or something. But I think that they needed a more competent closing shot. That's just me for this second film.
Yeah, I get you. I didn't have an issue
like
with
if he
it
sat on a throne, you know what I mean? Even something like that.
But I understand.
Right. Yeah,
I understand. You need to have a iconic end shot.
Yeah.
Not that Zendaya is not iconic, but you know what I mean. But the thing that I found a little bit strange and kind of like anticlimactic as well is like that final battle they have in the sand when like the worms come out at the end and they're trying to get into the, I don't know what that was, a temple or like.
You mean the Emperor's ship?
The Baron is
or,
his ship
right.
that is like a sphere, right? Mm. Sphere, right?
Yes.
I felt like that whole battle was like cut short because I know in David Lynch's Dune, the whole ending is them that whole battle where they're riding the worms and all that stuff. I felt like they didn't do that in the second one in Denis' version. I felt like that was what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Like at the end, I was like, oh, at the end the worms are gonna like they're gonna work aside. I mean, they're gonna work.
It was a lot more posturing in the second in the Dune 2, like more posturing.
Yeah, and I feel like I was. This is kind of like a weird comparison, but I was expecting something like Avatar: Way of the Water, where like the Payakan, the whale, comes and starts like destroying the humans.
Right, yeah.
Like I felt like that was supposed to happen in the end because it kind of happens in David Lynch's Dune. But I felt like this one, like, I don't know. That was a weird thing for me. Like, while I was watching it, I'm like, this is weird. I feel like more needs to be happening here. Because then it ended, and then it goes into the fight he has at the end. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know if that was a time thing, or they were just like, there's too much to put into this, so we have to, like,
they just go straight to the Fade Rafa fight, yeah.
Yeah, like I felt like that end battle needed to be super epic.
Which
it still was, but it wasn't to the point where I was like,
because there was so much action before that you thought there would be like the culmination of it, but then it becomes more of a personal battle between the two. And the things we don't have enough time with Fade Rafa to be like, oh, it's gonna be Joker versus Batman, you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
But I think that's the difference between directors. Like Denis is he's more concerned with like the personal relationships than, even though he does amazing set pieces and action, but he cares more about that than the other stuff, which I understand, which I'm totally with, you know what I mean? But like that's the only thing that kind of like threw me off a little bit. I was expecting it to be, because even in Lynch's version, that's the epic, finale of the movie.
Right.
Obviously, he fights Fade too, but
another.
it was almost like a triumphant
Right.
thing in Dune in Lynch's version. It wasn't in this one that much.
Yeah, I think it's because that was like Lynch's version was leading up to a war movie, and this was like the war's happening like 24/7 in this movie, so he wanted to make it as small as possible. And what could he have done different towards that ending that we didn't see 5 minutes before he fought Fade Rotha? Another omittance that's weird.
More interactions with the worm. Like I wanted the worms to really like play a big part in it, because they were showing them through both movies.
Yeah, and they revere the worms so much that you would think they.
Right.
But we don't know how much of a psychic, connection the worms have with the people. Like I'm still in the book where I'm trying to figure out what's going on and why they.
I think James Cameron also stole from this movie.
Oh, listen, Terminator. If Terminator says anything, you can understand where he stole from. But also Anya Taylor-Joy, who's playing Atreides' sister. That's a big omittance because she's in Lynch's version. Because when Jessica drinks the sandworm juice, so to speak, the baby is talking to her because she obviously had now this new power, and that's why the baby ages up so quick within 2 years in the Lynch version. Yeah. And in this one, I was like, because Anya Taylor-Joy is obviously, she's probably like 25, 24 or something like that. And they go to a flash forward of her. She would have been born by the time, just like in Lynch's version, she would have been born, and she is like part of that final battle. So that's the only thing where I'm like, how could she be in part 3 or something? Because I don't honestly, I don't know how the actor Timothée Chalamet is going to look older than her. He has to beef up or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, because she looks like a grown adult in that. She's clearly not a child. She's Anya Taylor-Joy. And people were complaining, they're like, oh, she should have been Princess Irulan, instead of Florence Pugh. But I think Pugh is good in it. But I can see why they would want Anya Taylor-Joy, because she looks like I don't mean in an insult. She looks like an alien being in a good way. But that was a weird thing because her character is supposed to be in the last half. But I think Villeneuve was just like, there's already so much to do. Although
there's too much. Yeah.
I don't think it would have been a complete screw up for the movie, but I think people would be like, "Oh, this is just taking too much," even though there's flying, worms and shit like that. It's
definitely what I like too about it, and what I give props to him is that he didn't make it, because usually the second movie, even though there's supposed to be a third one, but this is supposed to be the conclusion. Usually they'll do a 3-hour version. Yeah. The end, always the last film in whatever series is always the longest because they have to wrap everything up. It's like Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. That was 4 hours, or whatever the case may be,
right?
Depending on which version you want. But it's worth it because there was so much story that they told with those first 2 movies that you're like, I want more. But I think what I liked is that he didn't put too much. He was like, all right, I'm still gonna keep this 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm not gonna go overboard and do a 3-hour or 3.5 hour movie, which most people would do. Which I kind of like that. I did like that he kind of he held back a little bit, because you know what I mean. I also like the imagery of her speaking to the fetus.
Right.
You know what I mean? That whole imagery. At first you don't know what you're looking at when they first introduce it in the movie. And then you're like, oh, little by little, you start realizing that it's the developing. She's communicating with the baby, with the fetus, whatever. And then you keep seeing the imagery throughout the movie, which I thought was really well done. I thought that was a really well. Yeah. That's a great way to do it. You know what I mean?
I gotta say something else. I gotta say about the.
Yeah.
God, did I love those ornithopters? Those flying planes that they have in these.
Oh yeah.
I'd never seen. I don't know why it didn't come to me a plane looking like a dragonfly, because if you an ornithopter is a real thing. I know you've seen when the invention of the airplane, those really bizarre airplanes that look that have the wings that flap up and down on the sides where it looks like a bird. Those old school they tried to fly in this, they crashed into hell. That's what an ornithopter is, and in the book they're called ornithopters. I doubt they were like this because they also had the wings of an ornithopter. So in this one, they smartly designed them in a. I'm sure there's been designs of planes that look like not fireflies,
Insects?
dragonflies before, but this is the first time I can remember seeing that in a movie, and I thought that was such an interesting look for a helicopter. I wouldn't get on one of these damn things. I'll tell you that. It scared the hell out of me. But that just speaks to how great the production design in these movies are. The ships look cool. They'll bring in these ships and it sticks out and makes it look even more alien, which is so great. What you think, before we end this off, what you think about Fade Rotha and Chalamet's fight at the end, or Paul Atreides' fight at the end? Do you think it lived up to the hype?
I thought it was great.
Okay, cool. Same.
Yeah, it did. It did.
I think it was great.
I mean, I figured out what it was, because he gets stabbed, right?
Yeah.
Paul gets stabbed too.
I was a little confused by that part.
Me too. But then I realized what it was. It was the same thing that he did with Gurney, where they both stabbed each other.
Okay.
Remember in the beginning, I think that was like a little callback to that. You know.
Also,
what I mean?
a callback before we finish the Lynch part. Remember I was talking about Duncan Idaho getting slowly shot by the bullet that happens to him in the Dune 1. He almost gets shot by a bullet because the bullet's slowly piercing and he knocks it off. But go ahead, please finish.
But he gets killed in a different way, right? He gets stabbed.
Yeah, and in the book, he's killed off screen as well.
But I think, no. I mean, I think the fight was amazing.
His speech to the people is great. His speech, like Timothée Chalamet.
Oh, that's a great moment. Again, that's a great movie, and that's a great moment. His speech, the ending. I think the best scene is when he rides the worm for the first time. That's the best scene in this movie. I'm like, man, that scene is just one of those epic scenes. It's made for IMAX. Well.
It's made for the biggest screen to see in the world. Like,
and another thing about the film, just the filmmaking craft part of it, is like he used a lot of practical stuff. Like, it looks like everything is CGI, which there's a lot of CGI to like expand, and the scope of it. But even that scene, there's a great scene with him and Zendaya are trying to like destroy one of the
ornithopters,
the copters.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're like hiding in the shadow of one of those big
yes
spice mining things.
Oh my god, that was so cool.
And it keeps it's like the arm of it keeps going down and they hide it in the shadow. That was a real piece. That was a piece that was really there for them to like interact with. It wasn't like
that was such a stunning scene. Yeah, such a stunning scene.
It's so huge. You think like that's either like a miniature or it's like CGI or something, but it was like really there practically for them to like interact with. So I find that, and that's the reason why none of this movie feels artificial in any way. You could compare this to like Aquaman, and you're like, Aquaman is a computer, is like a video game, and this is a real. This is like a documentary.
There's weight to the people in the world and stuff like that.
Everything, but every shot, every long shot, every wide, every shot of like this I don't know what it's called, where Paul Atreides was living, where like they took over from the first one. That whole like sprawling.
Oh, okay, that place.
That looks real, and you could tell that it was like a model.
The little forest lands too that they were with spraying water and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Because he still uses models. Like in Blade Runner 2049, a lot of the cityscape were like models. Yeah. He didn't do just all CGI because and it shows because it like everything feels real and like tangible and like it's there. You know what I mean? So again, like that's what Denis is bringing to this, is like his sense of story and character, but also like the way he wants to shoot it. Like he's kind of like a mixture of like Christopher Nolan and like David Fincher or something. Like, he has both halves. Like he shoots digital, but then he uses CGI, but then he also loves practicals. Like he's like both parts. You know what I mean?
It was so funny because now that you brought that up, I was listening to Grace Randolph, because I learned like Hollywood news from her. She's a YouTuber. I think you know about her, the blonde lady. She called Villeneuve. She said he's Nolan the Light, and I was just like, no, you did not.
I don't think so.
I disagree with that whole premise.
Yeah, I disagree too. I think they're completely different.
Yes.
Yeah, he's his own thing. They're completely different. Like again, they share similarities in their love for like the craft and like how they approach it, but he's his own amalgamation of like he takes from everything. Nolan is a little bit too like, he's like very like he sticks to his thing. Like he only shoots film and this, and he's like Tarantino,
right?
You know what I mean? Like they're very like, they won't budge. But like Denis, I feel like he uses every piece to make the film work. You know what I mean? He doesn't care. Like he's like, I'm not a, you know, he doesn't care that it's shot on film. He shoots digital, but he's gonna make it look good. He's not gonna make it look like a piece of crap or like some like video game or like, you know, shot on video or something. You know, he knows how to do
Great
that.
music by Hans Zimmer, Greg Fraser as director of photography, Joel Walker.
The music is better in this one than the first one. Greg Fraser, he's gonna be like the top DP. He's already the top DP now. He did the Batman. He did the 2 Dunes. I mean, just those 3 films is like, forget it, bro. The Batman is like one of the forget it.
Right? Yeah.
Cinematography in that movie is amazing.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
I just rewatched that movie again, and I was just like, and it is divided people. There's a lot of people that do not like the Batman, and it drives me insane.
I don't know.
That is the closest to the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm animated Batman. Even though the Batman was based on the Tim Burton thing, the cartoon, this new Batman is closer to that film than I think it is the Tim Burton film. But it's a fantastic movie. I don't care.
That Batman is the best.
Yeah.
Best cinematic Batman that is ever made, bro. I'm telling you.
Even though people can rightly argue that it's ripping off from David Fincher, which it is, I don't care.
Yeah, but just
it is great. It's a great movie.
All it's ripping off is like the visual aesthetic. That's it. Movie. But everything else is it's a Batman film that is a detective film that is like a horror film that is like, I'm like, bro.
The Catwoman is fantastic.
I'm sorry. I love Nolan.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, so I apologize to any of the Dune fanaticals that if I've gotten any information wrong. Like I say, seriously, like when I saw The Exorcist, you know, and then I read the book after, I enjoyed the book a lot. Same with Dune, I'm enjoying the book a lot.
Oh, what did you think?
Oh, I love the book. The book was great. Like,
oh my god, the book is amazing.
I listened to the audiobook version with the writer, Blatty reading it. It's fantastic. So now I'm listening to this.
The book is amazing.
Yeah, I'm listening to this Dune audiobook, and it's phenomenal. The Dune book is great.
Hold on. What did you think of the book compared to the movie?
I had more of a visceral reaction to the film, obviously, because I'm seeing it going on.
Yeah.
But the book was certainly creepy. It was a disturbing book, and it was so interesting to hear a lot of the conversations that were in Exorcist Part 3 in the Exorcist novel. I was like, wait a minute, I know these characters, so like it really filled in a lot of gaps. Exorcist obviously very important cinema, so go read the book too. The book's great. But that's why I'm with Dune too. So that's why I'm apologizing a little bit to the Dune. I hope I did the Dune people a little bit proud, because I am reading the books and I'm getting into the world, and I think this is a world that is so interesting enough that I will give a look into the miniseries and stuff like that. I will give the first 6 books a try. I know that for sure, just because my friend says that you should by law if you're into the Dune universe. And I think
the miniseries is rated pretty high on IMDb, so it's probably good.
Anything is a step down from Villeneuve's version, so I don't know. But
and anything is a step up from Lynch's.
There you go. That's perfectly said. So I think obviously we're discussing Dune. It's a fabulous film. There is no ratings. I don't think there's any rating systems in this channel. So I personally am saying it's a fantastic movie. I think it's beautiful. I think the Dune duology by Villeneuve, and I think it's obviously he's going to get to do Messiah. I think he's working on the script right now. There was a whole big thing about Villeneuve saying that he would cut the dialogue mostly out of film because film is more of a visual thing for him, I guess. Which you can see by this movie it works, but the dialogue clearly is important in these movies. But I love the movie. I think these 2 films are fantastic, and I'm so grateful that he seems to be the only movie director. He's not a science fiction director, but he seems to be the only director that has made science fiction that I love. Do you know what I mean? Besides James Cameron has made some clearly some of the best science fiction classics of all time. Do I enjoy these more than the latest Avatar films? Sure, to a point. That's just me. I don't know about you. That just as a science fiction. So what are your final words on Dune Part 1 and 2 by Villeneuve?
No, I'm just looking forward to watching part 2 again.
Yeah.
And again,
you know how they're
I only saw it one time in theater.
You know how they keep replaying now because Hollywood needs money, that they're showing all like 9 Spider-Man movies. I would only watch the first 2 in theaters again myself. And maybe one of the animated, the new ones, the Across the Spider-Verse, because that visually is incredible. But I can't wait till they keep playing these back in cinemas, Dune 1 and 2 in cinemas, because that clearly is the best way to see these two films.
I wish. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Spider-Man, I wish they erased the Tom Holland ones and just put the animated ones as the new films. Because, dude, those films
they're incredible.
Those films are masterpieces compared to those films, man.
And listen, people, MCU fans, we are 2 people that have mostly watched all the MCU stuff. So it's not like, we're just being haters. We're not being Scorsese,
we watched
guys.
Pretty much everything. The first 10 years, we watched everything. So, you know what I mean? Like, the first 10 years MCU, we watched every movie, but then it just died off after Endgame.
Let's not end this Dune podcast on Marvel. Fantastic film. Villeneuve, once again, is great. He's working, I think, on a different film besides, because he has to step out of the world of Dune for a little bit, so I'm excited to see what he does with that. And then hopefully he gets to do Messiah within our lifetime. And I would love to see how he ends out that trilogy. Because obviously, I think if they make the money, they're going to try to make Dune Goes to Hawaii or whatever the hell else they're going to do.
They already made the money.
Yeah.
They already made the money.
I'm glad. But yes, that's it. I think that's it for us in our time with Dune. And I appreciate you listening to us. Go watch a good film. Tell us about it. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up. We are a new show, and we're trying to get along with you guys. So go to the cinema. Anything else, Max?
That's it, man.
All right.
Go watch movies.
Check out.